Hello and welcome to another video. I want you to know something, and that is debt is prevalent. In this world, you cannot escape debt. If you want to do anything substantial financially, you need to use debt. If you want to buy a house, most likely you will go into debt. If you want to go to university, you will go into debt. If you want a new car, you will go into debt. Debt is inescapable. Now, in this video, I want to talk about all the ways debt is used, from individual people to governments, and how we can use debt to our advantage. Now, you need to be extremely careful when it comes to debt. You need to understand it fully before you get yourself into debt. There is good and bad debt, which we will cover later in this video. So this goes without saying. Do your due diligence before you commit to any course of action. Don't just listen to some random cartoon on the internet. Anyways, let's get into this. What is debt? Debt refers to an obligation that requires one party, known as the debtor, to repay money or goods to another party, known as the creditor. It's essentially borrowing money with the promise of repayment, usually with interest. Debt can take various forms, including loans, bonds, mortgages, credit card balances, and other financial instruments. Debts can be incurred by individuals, businesses, or governments for various purposes, such as financing purchases, investing in projects, or covering operational expenses. While debt can be a useful tool for funding growth or managing cash flow, excessive debt levels can pose financial risk and strain on the debtor's ability to repay. Managing debt responsibly is extremely important. Now, let's take a look at how individuals, businesses, and governments use/incur debt. For individuals, the most common way people get into debt is by borrowing money. They may take out a loan from a bank, credit union, or online lenders to finance purchases like cars, homes, education, or other expenses. Credit card is another common way people get into debt. Using credit cards allows people to spend money they don't currently have up to a certain limit. When they carry a balance on their credit card and don't pay it off in full each month, they incur debt and usually have to pay interest on the outstanding balance. Another way is buying a home, as this often involves taking out a mortgage. Student loans is a big factor to people's debts, among many other things. Now, for businesses, similar to individuals, businesses can borrow money from banks, credit unions, or alternative lenders to finance various needs, such as starting or expanding operations, purchasing equipment, or funding working capital. Businesses can establish lines of credit, which are flexible borrowing arrangements that allow them to borrow funds as needed up to a predetermined limit. They usually pay interest only on the amount they borrow. Larger corporations may issue bonds to raise capital. Bonds are essentially loans that investors provide to the company, and in return, the company pays interest periodically and repays the principal amount at the bond's maturity date. Another way is businesses may obtain goods or service from suppliers on credit, allowing them to defer payment for a certain period, typically 30 to 90 days. This can be in a form of short-term debt used to manage cash flow. Businesses can also lease equipment or property rather than purchasing them outright. While this doesn't involve traditional borrowing, it still represents a financial obligation that can impact the company's cash flow and financial health. Businesses may also incur debt through accounts payable, which represents amounts owed to suppliers or vendors for goods or services received on credit. These amounts need to be paid within a specified time frame. Now, governments. Governments can issue bonds to raise funds from investors. These bonds typically have a fixed interest rate and maturity date. Investors purchase bonds, effectively loaning money to the government, and in return, they receive periodic interest payments and the repayment of the principal amount at maturity. Governments can also borrow money from domestic sources such as banks, financial institutions, or individuals, as well as from foreign entities such as other governments, international organizations, or investors in the forms of loans. These loans can be used for various purposes, including infrastructure projects, social programs, or any budgetary needs. Another way governments can use debt is they can issue short-term debt securities such as treasury bills and treasury notes to raise funds. These securities are typically sold at a discount to their face value and redeemed at full face value upon maturity, providing the government with immediate cash while incurring a repayment obligation in the future. Governments can borrow from international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund (IMF) or the World Bank to address balance of payment deficits, stabilize their currencies, or finance development projects. Loans from these institutions often come with conditions and terms aimed at promoting economic stability and growth. You see, debt is prevalent. In fact, it's so prevalent that the economy is backed by debt. From individuals, businesses, governments, and banks, the world revolves around it. Debt is used for buying homes, building infrastructure, funding research and development. Debt allows consumers to spend more than their current income level would otherwise allow. This increased consumption can drive demand for goods and services, supporting businesses and employment. Governments use debt to finance public expenditures, including infrastructure projects, social programs, defense, and healthcare. And during economic downturns, governments may increase spending to stimulate demand and support recovery efforts, leading to higher levels of debt. Central banks use debt instruments, such as government bonds, as tools for implementing monetary policy. For example, central banks may buy government bonds to inject liquidity into the financial system, lower interest rates, and stimulate borrowing and investments. Conversely, they may sell bonds to reduce money supply growth and control inflation. Debt can influence asset prices, such as stocks, real estate, and commodities. For instance, low interest rates encourage borrowing and investments, which can drive up asset prices. Rising asset prices can increase wealth, consumer spending, and economic confidence, contributing to overall economic growth. Debt instruments, including bonds, loans, and derivatives, play a crucial role in financial markets by providing avenues for investors to allocate capital, manage risk, and earn returns. Debt markets facilitate borrowing and lending activities, allowing businesses and governments to raise funds, investors to earn interest income, and financial institutions to intermediate between savers and borrowers. Overall, debt serves as a fundamental driver of economic activity. Now, we've seen how the entire world uses debt. Let's look at how we can use debt for our financial advantage. So let's first consider what is good debt and what is bad debt. In a nutshell, good debt is something that makes you money and bad debt is something that costs you money. For example, accumulating high interest credit card debt is bad debt. Accumulating credit card debt with high interest rates for non-essential purchases or lifestyle expenses is considered very bad debt. High interest debt can quickly spiral out of control and become difficult to repay, leading to financial stress. Credit cards, when used responsibly, are a great way to build your credit score, but used irresponsibly, it just leads to misery and disaster. Borrowing money to purchase items like cars, furniture, or electronics that rapidly depreciate in value can be considered bad debt. Using loans for items that lose value over time can result in negative equity. And the worst kind of all, taking out short-term, high-interest loans like payday loans or cash advances can be considered bad debt due to their extremely high cost and potential for trapping individuals in a cycle of debt. Also, borrowing money for non-essential expenses like vacations, luxury items, or entertainment can be considered very bad debt if it leads to financial strain. Now, taking out student loans to finance your education can lead to increased earning potential. This can be considered a good debt. Borrowing money to purchase a home can be considered good debt, especially if the property appreciates in value over time, or use that money to buy rental properties which then generate you cash flow each month, as well as potentially going up in value. Borrowing money to start or expand a business can be considered good debt if it leads to increased income and profitability. You see, when it comes to debt, you need to be smart, you need to be strategic, you need to use debt to make you rich, so you don't have to worry about the negative side of debt ever again. If you dream of being in a profession that requires a master's or PhD, then that debt can pay off. If your dream doesn't require a master's or PhD, then you are getting yourself into debt for no reason. If you have vast experience in a certain sector, then taking the leap of faith and starting your business, financing that by borrowing money, can be using debt in a good way. If your business becomes profitable, then that was money spent well. Investing into the real estate market to generate cash flow, using credit cards responsibly, so staying within the limit, only spending what you need such as groceries and not on wants, paying off the balance in full immediately. This can help improve your credit score. Debt used correctly can help you in so many ways. It can accelerate your journey to being financially free, but debt used incorrectly can financially ruin you. So don't shy away from debt. Understand debt fully. Learn about it fully. Learn how you can use it for your advantage. Learn what not to do as well as what to do. Because as you see, the entire world is backed by debt. So, hope you found this video helpful. If you did, then subscribe, give it a like, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and take care.